Welcome back to the channel. I'm really glad you're here. Today I'm going to take this plate metal, I'm going to cut it up, and I'm going to weld a surround for my fireplace using my Hobart Handler 140 welder. So stick around. So I've got this old gas fireplace, and you can see that it needs to have a surround built around it because the wood can't go right up to the edge of the fireplace. So there has to be something along here. And what I had was a nice, well, it was nice in the 1990s, a very bright brass surround, but it looks pretty dated. So I'm going to fill this in with just flat metal painted black, and it should look very nice. Now this should be a relatively easy project. What I have to do is take these 12-inch pieces of 1/16 inch thick plate steel, which is thicker than I needed, but it's nice and sturdy. I need to cut these in half all the way down to end up with two 6-inch pieces. I have to do that on both pieces. Then I have to cut them to make the surround shape, which is basically a U or an N. It's like this, you know, goes around three sides. So that's what I have to do. One of my challenges is that I don't have any way to cut this steel other than my saber saw or jigsaw here, and I only found one metal cutting blade, which also happens to be used. So I'm hoping I can get through. I only need to do 3 cuts. Both of these pieces have to be cut the entire length, and then I have to cut the end off of one of them just to get the width that I need. So I'm going to use this saw. I'm going to cut straight down the middle. The other challenge is that this has to be a relatively finished edge because it's going to be seen as part of the surround. So I'm going to cut as nice as I can with this saw, and then I'll probably use my small grinder just to flatten that side off. So let's start by setting up a template so that we can cut straight down the wood at exactly 6 inches wide. So now I've got a mark at each end at 6 inches, and I've got this piece of plywood with a nice factory edge, and I'm going to use this as a guide for my saw. Now the center of my saw blade is exactly 1 9/16 from the edge of the saw. So I need to make up for that 1 9/16 when I set up my guide. So I'm just going to set my guide at 7 9/16, and then I'm going to clamp the wood to the metal. Well, you know the old saying, measure twice, cut once. I like to measure like 6 times, just to be sure. I've got to say, that's a pretty impressive straight cut. I just need to clean the burrs off the edge and cut the other pieces, and I think we'll be in good shape. All right, I've cut the 3 pieces to length, and this is the basic shape of the surround, as you can see here. Now I'm just going to take the Hobart welder. I'm going to tack weld it in a couple places, take it inside to dry fit it, and then weld the rest of the seam. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm using the Hobart Handler 140 Fluxcore welder. It also is a Mig welder, but I'm using Fluxcore wire. This welder runs on standard 120 volt household current, which works really well. I'm running 030 Fluxcore wire, and there's a gauge inside the door that tells you if you're using 030 with no shielding gas required, which means you're using Fluxcore wire, 030, 16 gauge, which is about 1/16 of an inch. The power setting is at 2, and the feed rate is at 30. So over here, that's where we set the voltage to level 2 and the feed rate of the wire at 30. And that's a good reference point. We can always adjust that later if we need to. Well, I brought it inside, did a little dry fit. Fits really well. So now I'm just going to finish welding these 2 seams, and I'm going to hit them with a grinder to make them look nice and pretty. And then we'll clean up the edges. Don't know if I'll be able to put some paint on it today or not because it is pretty cold, but let's finish up. Now, I'm no welder, and I'm glad that I didn't go with any thinner metal because this is pretty difficult. If you stay on too long, you burn right through it. So I'm moving really quickly across. This isn't really a strong weld, or doesn't need to be a strong weld. It's just holding the piece together. Basically, once it's screwed in place, it's not going to have any stress on it or anything. But I really don't want to burn through because it's tough to fill those in. Now I'm just going to use my Dewalt 4-inch grinder with the flap disc on it to clean these welds up. Well, as luck would have it, I have a couple cans of Rust-Oleum. This one's almost empty. This one's almost full. I think we're in good shape. I'm going to hit it with some light paint, let it dry, and then we'll take it in and screw it into place. I'll have to drill a couple holes to get it in place, but I want to get it painted first. Well, that looks every bit as good as I hoped it would. Gotta love it when a plan comes together. Well, thanks for watching, and as always, if you enjoy the content, I appreciate if you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.